Hi, welcome back to Mike Simpson Wood Carving. This video today is not really I'm not gonna demonstrate a wood carving um, like I typically will in my videos, but this video is going to be about tools, wood carving tools in particular. And I'm going to show you my tools, and then I'm going to show you some of the uses that they'll have. So stay tuned. Okay, first I want to show you a tool that I don't use wood carving. These are chisels. Everybody thinks that a wood carver uses a lot of chisels, but actually I don't. This is a chisel. I bought it. It was only $1.19. You can see I bought it there. The chisel is flat. It doesn't have any dish to it. So it's just a very straight tool. And it's really used for woodworking more than wood carving. I actually bought these chisels simply for the handles because they were so cheap. As you can see, the cut that it makes is going to be straight. It's going to be flat. And I don't use those at all wood carving. Let's start out. I'll show you my knives, and got a variety of knives. This one's a homemade one from a hacksaw blade. This one's a homemade one from a file. That one that somebody gave me, and this is a store-bought knife, and so is this one. That was about wore out. You can see there's hardly any blade left. And then next up is the V-tool or a parting tool, and the reason it's called a V-tool is because it's kind of like two chisels side by side that make a V. And down at the bottom of that V is a U shape. So you need to know that as you sharpen that thing, because it's not a straight V, it's actually got a little U in the bottom of it. I have one that the smallest one I have here is probably only like 2 millimeters wide, and it really does some fine detail, like for detailing, like putting hair on a carving or doing the eyes. Little bitty, that's what the cut would look like. So anything from that, they go right on up to the larger tools. It's probably the biggest one I have. And V-tools are given a number system. Well, there's different ways that manufacturers name their tools, but let me show you the difference in like these two, a couple of these tools. Now, there are 3 different kinds of V-tools in the ones that I've purchased. There's one that's like an acute angle, and there's another one that I'm not probably going to be good at, drawing at about a 90 degree, and then that last one that I showed you there, that's a much more obtuse. So that's the 3 types of tools that I have. I have small tools that are like handheld. They're kind of a push-pull motion, and then larger ones that you'll want to drive those with a mallet. Those larger tools. Speaking of mallets, this one's made out of lignum vitae, and it's my favorite. I have 2 more. I have one that's an oak one that my grandfather made for me, and then another oak one that a friend made for me. All right, so that's my V tools or parting tools. And next up, I'll show you some gouges. Now remember, gouges are different than chisels because they have some dish to them. They're not flat, and they start out small, maybe up all the way up to about 70 millimeter. The smallest one's probably about 3 or 4 millimeter. And again, I want to reiterate that a chisel is a flat tool. There's no dish whatsoever. Whereas a chisel or a gouge has a little bit of a dish to it. They look kind of flat, but the fact is they have some dish. And they're much more preferred by me for wood carving than a chisel because they tend not to they tend to come back out of the wood easily. And so I have different sizes all the way from about a 20 to a 50 to a 70 millimeter. So that's those chisels that are mostly flat. Next up, I want to show you some gouges that have more dish to them. Oh, first let me show you this tool. This is another tool that's all its own. You know, you've got a chisel, you got gouges, you got veiners, and then you have this, and it's called a veiner. In the bottom of this tool, there's a U shape, just like in the bottom of a V-tool or parting tool, but instead of being a V, it ends up making a really deep U shape. I only have one veiner, and this is it. It's a really small tool, probably 2 millimeter wide. Hardly ever use it. And then all these gouges. These gouges have more dish to them than the first group that I showed you. The first group was mostly flat, but this group, they tend to have more dish to them. Okay. I don't know if you can see how much dish there is, but they go in size from the smaller ones all the way up to, well, here's a couple that they're actually the same size, but if you see one of them, the dish on the right is not quite as deep as the one on the left. The one on the left is much deeper. So they have different amounts of sweep, all the way up to a 70 millimeter. And notice they also come in the push-pull type, and then there's a palm version that you just hold in one hand, a palm tool. And then, of course, the larger ones that have they're set up for being driven by a mallet. And that finishes those tools. The only other thing I want to show you is my vise, and it's a woodworker's vise. It's a little bit different than a normal, like a machinist vise, because I don't know if you noticed there, it slides in and out until you go to tighten it. And when you tighten it, it's got a moving mechanism in there that flips and will cause it to tighten. It'll hold your carvings in place so that you can do all the work that you want. But the nice thing about it then is when you loosen it, it'll slide easily all the way in and out. So it's much handier than a regular vise that you have to spin all the way in and all the way out. And then I've been asked, where do you buy tools? Well, I got my tools a long time ago, but if on the internet you Google Dastra tools, or you can go to woodcraft.com, those are two great sources for buying tools.